What's going on, guys? I have an interesting one for you tonight, I think. I was going to react to this Illuminati AI video, and then I watched some of it and realized there wasn't really much to react to, but I'm still going to use it to kind of elucidate something. Here, let me get a better background going. There you go, this guy again, right? Basically, as somebody who deals with a lot of metaphysics and spirituality and occult kind of stuff, I'm regularly confronting the unanswerable or potentially unanswerable questions of life and the great problems of existence. And the Gnostic in me says that it is possible to have knowledge regarding these things. And the agnostic in me knows better. So what I've found is that there is a sort of balance that you can pursue these metaphysical ideas and breadcrumb trails, and they do actually go somewhere more often than not if you genuinely develop the skill to pursue these things with critical thinking and a balance of, open-mindedness and skepticism. So one of those questions has to do with energy. But before I get into that, let's talk a little bit about what scientific illuminism is and why it's such a useful mindset. For me, it's more like I was an illuminist and then I found out that that already existed, right? And so the idea is that you are looking for ways to have certainty in regards to these great questions rather than faith. And so there's certain protocol that I developed over time to sort of help me separate the wheat from the chaff and to keep from getting lost in the canals of my mind, which unfortunately did happen. Over time, you get better and better at pulling yourself out of these chasms, I suppose. But a good example of how the Illuminist approach works is that, say you hear something like as above, so below. And then you're looking at the time scales of the astrophysics of creation, right? And you realize that if you were to ignite a small amount of gunpowder and you have this tiny explosion and it frizzles out almost immediately, there is a period following the lifetime of the stars that is so long that if we scale it down to where the lifetime of the stars is just a minute, there are billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of years of nothing but black holes. So this analogy of this discharge of energy and then the release of that energy, the balancing of the equation to zero, these great metaphors like that. Or the one that I use all the time is that if you shrink down so small that you're the same size relative to the nucleus of an atom as you are to the Earth, there's the same distance between where you are standing now and to the nearest proton. These sort of things are indicators that as above, so below actually has some kind of validity and substance to it. And that is reinforced the more time goes by, the more you examine it, the more you sift through, the repository of ancient knowledge and science. You see more and more reason that this idea has clout, right? So no self-respecting scientific illuminist will posit something and then offer absolutely nothing to support it, which is exactly what happens in this Pythagorean Illuminati video and in a lot of their material. I have a friend who is really into this stuff, and he oftentimes will present me with something, and I will say, for example, well, what is a sinusoidal wave? And from his answers, I've noticed that he actually thinks I don't know what a sinusoidal wave is. I'm actually asking. But I'm asking for his definition, and what I always get is just more terms from Pythagorean Illuminati. And I've noticed that that's how their work is. You just keep getting referenced to these other terms, and without any real definition or explanation of what those terms are. So it's a really interesting thing to examine, because I think this is a great way to hone your metaphysical skills and to avoid going down rabbit holes that aren't fruitful. But speaking of this particular rabbit hole and how I ended up here, Euler's formula is actually really interesting, because one of the tenets of scientific illuminism, and this was fantastic for me to discover, because I had basically a vision that showed me that the universe was an equation balancing to zero. And I've discovered over time that that was a central idea in works like Aleister Crowley's Book of Lies, and all sorts of other things. All systems are tending towards homeostasis and all of this sort of stuff. And so I saw this again in the Pythagorean Illuminati works. They have a different version of this. And again, their stuff, so far as I can tell, is just, they take the three veils of negative existence of the Kabbalah and they give it a different name, and they act like they discovered it or something. And then, the law of necessity that has been part of the mystery tradition for thousands of years, they renamed it the PSR, the principle of sufficient reason. So all of this stuff I find highly suspicious, that, they go after Morgue for, what is it called, when you steal plagiarism. But then every single idea that I see them presented comes from Aleister Crowley or Leibniz or someone, But anyways, the point of this tirade is basically that I asked the question a few years ago, what is energy exactly? And I thought that I would get on Google, and I would pull it up, and it would have a nice, neat definition of what energy is. And it turns out that there isn't one. That energy in physics is the capacity for doing work. It may exist in potential, kinetic, thermal, electrical, chemical, nuclear, or other various forms. There are, moreover, heat and work, energy in the process of transfer from one body to another. After it has been transferred, energy is always designated according to its nature. Hence, heat transferred may become thermal energy, while work done may manifest itself in the form of mechanical energy, and so on and so forth. The important thing really being that all forms of energy are associated with motion. So what does that mean for subatomic physics? What does it mean to say that a gluon is the potential to do work? What it means is that we have not found anything of substance. And this brings us back to scientific illuminism and the idea of nothingness being the one eternal condition. It's like there's a framework that everything hangs on, and that framework is somehow nothingness, but it is a dynamic zero. And when you hear that at first, the tendency is to go, okay, well, that sounds like a bunch of bullshit. Like, what is a dynamic zero? Well, what is a zero of a different order of magnitude? That's a mathematical reality too. But what I'm getting at with this is that there is nothing there when we talk about energy. It's just a dynamic zero that's somehow balancing with itself. And we can go down all kinds of rabbit holes in terms of like what exactly that means. Does it mean that because time maybe is not linear, that we are observing some sort of some sort of temporal process, and in the transtemporal sense, there is never an equation balancing; it's always balanced, and our sense of time is just an illusion of it balancing, or what is the actual answer? Nobody really seems to know. But here's the important thing for spiritual people, because generally spirituality in the modern context, as far as I can tell, is about 99% bullshit. And this is always the case with just about everything. When you look at the scale of like human beauty, if you analyze it with AI in terms of symmetry, there's like 1% meets this almost perfect metric, and the other 99% is nowhere near it. Wealth consolidates in the top 1%. The top 1% of IQ starts at 130, and so there's this huge mass of almost functionless intelligence below that, and it represents the overwhelming majority of it. Spirituality is no different, but especially in the modern context, right? So one of the things we hear all the time is about bad energy, negative energy. what the fuck are you talking about? What is this? You know, people talk about energy as if it's some sort of substance. There's some kind of thing there. And I think that for a long time, that's what I thought. And I know for a fact that that's what a lot of other people think. And ever since I found out that, you know, energy is not some thing, it's just some tendency to express. So back to the muons and gluons and whatnot, what that means is that we have not really discovered particles. What we have discovered is tendencies or functions that are grouped together in aggregate that collectively form a system. As above, so below. This is exactly the same as gravity, electromagnetism, and the other four forces of physics exerting themselves on stars and planets and people and coordinating them, ordering them, bringing them into homeostasis and relation with each other. And it is due primarily to the influence of those factors that shit happens, right? And so in subatomic particle physics, really what we're talking about is aggregates of tendencies for things to move in certain ways and to exert certain influences over each other. But here's the fucking question, and what has been driving me nuts, right? And this thing with my friend that's a huge fan of the Pythagorean Illuminati basically started because I said, well, what is the dynamic zero? What is it that moves? Sinusoidal waves. And I think he thought, as I said earlier, that I didn't know what sinusoidal waves are, but I was looking for, you know, tell me what you think that is. And, you know, the answer that I got was deeply unsatisfactory. So let's have a look at what sinusoidal waves are according to Google, because you'll see why it's a totally unsatisfactory answer, whatever I was given. I don't remember what it was, but we don't need the specifics in order to see why it's not even an answer. Where'd it go? Sorry, I got so much stuff piled up here because I'm planning on doing a music stream after this. I guess I should have checked in with the chat to see if, God damn it, it's too cluttered. Sinusoidal waves. There we go. Okay. So sine wave, sinusoidal wave. A sinusoidal wave is the most natural representation of how things in nature change state. The variable could be audible sound, for example. What moves is not a fucking sinusoidal wave. That's just a description of something moving. That's not what it is that moves. And so, you know, when you try to pin down the Pythagorean Illuminati, when they offer, as he does in this video that we're going to watch a little bit of, a definition for energy, it is no better than science's definition. And then he goes on for like 8 minutes about how they're a failure of science is because of empiricism and blah, 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 without ever offering any kind of real answer. So sinusoidal wave is not an answer for what energy is. It is not an answer for anything. It is just a term that describes certain types of waves and their function. That is all. It's not even a specific thing. So again, what is it that moves? And just in case, you know, it's me getting something wrong here, let's watch some of this video, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe one of you guys will be able to tell me, hey, you're missing this. But I don't think so. I think I'm describing exactly what happens here. And this makes me doubt their authenticity completely, because this would not escape me. This would not get by me. I would never make a video saying, I'm going to explain what energy is, define energy, and then give you some bullshit term that doesn't mean anything, and then just change the subject and call that you know what I mean? I wouldn't do that. So, I mean, if these guys do that, credibility is looking a little bit shaky, for sure.
Defining energy. Paul Davies said, energy is a purely abstract quantity, introduced into physics as a useful model with which we can shortcut complex calculations. You cannot see or touch energy, yet the word is now so much part of daily conversation that people think of energy as a tangible entity with an existence of its own. In reality, energy is merely part of a set of mathematical relationships that connect together observations of mechanical processes in a simple way. What Bohr's philosophy suggests is that words like electron, photon, or atom should be regarded in the same way, as useful models that consolidate in our imagination what is actually only a set of mathematical relations connecting observations. Science cannot define energy. Mathematics can. Energy is exactly what is defined by Euler's formula. Energy is nothing other than sinusoidal waves, which can exist dimensionlessly, as orthogonal mental thoughts, or dimensionally, as...
Okay, so orthogonal just means, I think at 90-degree angles. So I don't know what exactly. See what I mean, though? I didn't hear any insight into anything. Mathematics can define it. Okay, go ahead. Oh no, wait. We're just gonna skip that part, right?
non-orthogonal matter. Why would any rational person accept science's non-definition of energy in preference to ontological
Why would I accept your non-definition, motherfucker? What is this?
mathematics' exact definition? Science refuses to provide definitions of the most important things.
So do you.
For example, it has never defined time. It tells you how to measure time with a clock, but it does not define what time actually is.
So here it comes, right? He's about to define time.
Instrumental definitions based on measurements and measuring instruments are not
Nope.
ontological definitions, that is, those that tell you what something actually is, those that tell you the exact nature of its existence, and nor are they epistemological definitions, that is, those that place the entity within a coherent, consistent, complete body of knowledge. Mathematics provides ontological and epistemological definitions. Science provides instrumental definitions. This is a fundamental difference. This means that science will never be able to provide ultimate explanations and answers. Science, it must never be forgotten, is an empirical method, not a rational system of explanation. In fact, science usually rejects explanations, especially rational ones, since these are deemed metaphysical. Science is concerned with how, not why. Science explicitly rejects teleology, which is all about why. Therefore,
So wait a minute. What happened to defining energy? Now we're just trashing science? Like, what happened to defining energy? What happened to defining time? Like, where did that go? Just like, do. What the fuck?
science cannot be said to be looking for true explanations. It is more concerned with describing processes within models, and then fallaciously calling these descriptions explanations.
Oh, wow. Isn't that like remarkably similar to how I just described the entire works of the Pythagorean Illuminati? I mean, this is getting a little bit like difficult. I'm going to continue to sift through it because it does seem like there may be some interesting ideas here, but man.
They are nothing of the kind.
No.
Newtonian physics has been formally falsified by Einsteinian physics, and also by quantum mechanics, yet useful explanations can nevertheless be generated by Newtonian physics, since our everyday world reflects the domain of applicability of Newtonian physics extremely well. That is, in most situations Newtonian physics will produce accurate results and predictions. Newtonian explanations can be furnished for all sorts of things, but they are never true explanations since Newtonian physics is emphatically false. They are explanations reflecting the Newtonian model of reality. This is a good model within a certain range of our experiences, but it is not a true model. Good explanations, based on models, are not true explanations based on reality. Scientists have never grasped this distinction. Scientists are never anything more than modelers, and their models are always ultimately wrong, even though they may provide successful results within specific domains and ranges.
So did you guys catch how he just said the same thing like 9 times in different ways? I mean, that's also kind of indicative that like when you don't really have anything to say and you're kind of trying to evade that, you just like talk about shit and bramble and say the same shit over and over again. I mean, I'm really losing faith here.
Nietzsche said, "Success has always been the greatest liar." This is very much the case with science. All scientific models are lies that are regarded as true. Science tells us zero about true reality. Science always reflects its fallacious philosophy of empiricism and materialism, which is its philosophical model of reality, upon which all of its specific models, specific theories, are based. Every scientific model and explanation would be different if rationalism and idealism were the underlying philosophy rather than empiricism and materialism. Every scientific explanation rejects mind as a causal agent. Imagine how different science would be if it recognized that mind, made of photons, was the true basis of reality.
Okay, now there is some evidence for that, and it's very subtle. And this is somewhere where I'll get on board with these guys and say, obviously the deterministic rationalist, like purely that approach is dildos, a great forest of plastic flopping dildos slapping us in the face. Because, all right, if you take, for example, the shaman in the forest, someone has been bitten by a snake, and it's not just that you look for a plant that has snake heads drooping and some skin that looks like a snake. It looks like a Dos Equis, this plant that is the anti-venom basically for this particular snake bite, has the same pattern on its fucking skin. All right. So something knows that something is looking. Nature knows that something is looking. You can write that off as a coincidence if you're a completely brainwashed moron. And it doesn't matter to me how many PhDs you have. If your mind is trapped in a box, you're an idiot. And I don't mean that in an insulting way necessarily, but I mean that in an absolutely literal sense. You are not able to actively transmute, observation into actionable information and understanding. Your ability to actually think is limited, in this case, by your arrogant belief in what has been prescribed to you as the parameters of reality. And there are more subtle things too. I mean, you notice how vaginal flowers are, and there's this similar nature in them. A lot of things that are just of the feminine nature will have curves. We do it even in our symbolism. The question mark, curvy like a woman is a mystery and the unknown, and the exclamation point is a straight line, and it's masculine, and it's the assertion. So that is a huge thing that we do actually see evidence that mind plays some sort of formative role. Another indication of that comes in the form of colors as a language of the universe. In the Western occult tradition, most notably in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, you have the king scale and the queen scale, these different ways of understanding color as the same sort of fundamental energetic expression that an electron is. It's something that is a fundamental essence. And so in nature, you have a yellow as an indicator that it is poison, which is power, which is solar and electromagnetic. And then you observe light, and it's yellow. And so not only can we sort of decode the language that nature speaks, but we can also see the underlying energies and why these things are expressed in the ways that they are, and come up with a profound and deep understanding of the universe. And the position of the scientific illuminist is that it is the alchemical marriage of Christian Rosenkreuz. It is the true marriage of the rose and the cross. It is the dovetailing of science and metaphysics to actually create complementary systems that are in no way in conflict with each other. That's one of the great poisons of the modern era, I think. That, is there construction going on all of a sudden? What the fuck? Didn't see that coming. Yeah, that the feminine has been demonized, the intuitive has been demonized, and so the backlash is that people have this kind of assertion that if you're going to be spiritual, you have to be an idiot because you have to let go of critical thinking and skepticism and just be a moron. And that's not real. That's terrible, And of course, that's not how they put it, but that's what ends up happening. And the reality is that you don't need to abandon reason, logic, and common sense. Those things will always be part of every structure, be it spiritual, psychological, emotional, physical, whatever. All the same laws exert themselves on all the systems, and so they very reliably have these certain characteristics. And anything that exists is going to be logical. It's going to make sense. And the PSR, as the Pythagorean Illuminati calls it, it's a principle of sufficient reason that Masons would just call the law of necessity, that nothing in the universe happens unless it has to. The number one king of universal law is necessity. And a lot of people struggle to accept that, but the reality is that it's one of the most powerful things that you can learn.
That all explanations must start with the mind. Every explanation in science would change. That's how sensitive scientific explanation is to its underlying philosophy. Science is just a large collection of sensory measurements, organized according to provisional, quasi-mathematical formulae, which are interpreted via the sensory philosophy of empiricism and materialism. Science's entire method opposes both idealism and rationalism, hence science is a formally irrationalist ideology. Science endorses empiricism, not rationalism. Everything that science does is hostile to ontology and epistemology. Science is an ad hoc undertaking, full of arbitrariness. Science is heuristic. Wikipedia says, a heuristic technique, often called simply a heuristic, is any approach to problem solving, learning, or discovery that employs a practical method not guaranteed to be optimal or perfect, but sufficient for the immediate goals. Science is all about the practical exercise of measuring things.
That's not really what heuristic is. I mean, it might be Wikipedia, that might be what it says, but what it actually means is that your predictions about the future are based on your experiences of the past, and there's really no way around that, and there's really no more reliable way to understand the universe. The problem with heuristic bias is that it can make, we can have beliefs that aren't true. We can believe that things have worked out before. Like if you're a gambler and you win 50 times in a row, and then you lose all your money because you developed a heuristic bias that you're going to win eventually because you won so many times before, and you end up in a cardboard box on the streets of LA. So, and also you believe that because you've flown in a plane before 100 times, it's not going to crash, and then it goes down and you're awfully surprised. So that's when heuristic bias is working against you. When it's working for you, you have gotten on your bike for the 10,000th time, and you know that you're not going to crash because you haven't the last 9,999 times.
Things, and producing patterns. The patterns are then matched to various mathematical formulae. The formulae are then placed within the context of empiricism and materialism, by which they are interpreted and used to provide explanations regarding this model and philosophy of reality. The whole scientific enterprise is provisional. Anything can be falsified at any time by new data, and everything is in permanent need of verification, that is, nothing is ever definitively proved. An explanation is not an explanation if it can be overturned at any time. It's a belief system, a kind of religion. It's better than standard religion, to be sure, because it has a method, and, above all, uses mathematics, which automatically brings it into contact with true reality, which is wholly mathematical. No rationalist could ever take science seriously, but empiricists, who don't care about proof and definitive answers, and indeed regard such things as non-scientific, believe that science is the best humanity can do as far as knowledge and answers go. They are happy to doubt their theories, happy for nothing to ever be properly resolved. They even try to make a virtue of this catastrophic inability to get to the ultimate, definitive truth. Mathematics, the quintessential rationalist subject, rejects all of this. All rationalists are drawn to mathematics, all empiricists to science. Thinking types are mathematicians. Sensing types are scientists. Mathematics is about reason and logic. Science is about the senses and has scant regard for reason.
Of course, there's tons of issues with all of this. He said that Newtonian physics works pretty well because you can make all kinds of predictions and do things that actually work in the real world. But he's criticizing science and saying that nothing about it is true, nothing about it is proven. You could say that some things might not be true, but if you're going to use the metric of being able to, I have this camera here, all kinds of science in there happening. I'm lighting the room with science. I have a computer sitting here that's also, what is he talking about exactly? By the standards he applies to Newtonian physics, science also, a lot of the things that science says are demonstrably true. You can definitely do stuff with it. So it's a bit weird of a generalization.
And logic. These are not part of the scientific method, which revolves around sensory observations and finding real numbered mathematical formulae to make sense of them. It's a disgrace when prominent scientists set up reason foundations and institutions. Science is as opposed to reason as religious faith is. Reason enters science only through mathematics. Remove mathematics from science, and all reason would vanish too.
There's another issue with this too, that it kind of suggests that they're not really mathematicians, because once you take mathematics out far enough, reason and logic does not always apply. There's all sorts of irrationality and paradoxes and all kinds of shit. It breaks down just as badly as empiricism does. So this almost suggests that they're trying to make an ontological model based on mathematics without really understanding mathematics.
Science would revert to alchemy, astrology, and divination, which are its authentic roots. Martin Luther said, "Reason is the devil's whore," meaning that faith is God's bride. Science also says that reason is the devil's whore, with the human senses now becoming God's bride. Mathematics regards religion and science as the devil's whores. Faith and empiricism must be rejected. They are the twin enemies of rationalism. The principle of sufficient reason is the true God, and mathematics is the mind and body of God. All other gods are false gods, and all prophets of non-mathematics are false prophets.
All right, let's give him a little bit more
The power of Euler's formula is well
space.
illustrated through Einstein's famous special theory of relativity. Euler's formula is the true basis of Einstein's theory, yet also reveals that Einstein committed several acute interpretive errors, which have plagued science ever since. Einstein misinterpreted his own theory precisely because he was thinking as an empiricist rather than as a rationalist. Einstein said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." For knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world, and all there ever will be to know and understand. In fact, mathematics, not imagination, embraces the entire world, and is all there ever will be to know and understand. Had he been more imaginative, Einstein would have realized this. Like all scientists, he suffered from a cataclysmic lack of imagination. A wholesale inability to imagine a world without space, time, and matter. Sensing types, such as Einstein, are the opposite of intuitive types. Intuitives have enormously more powerful imaginations. The most important component of Einstein's special theory is the postulate that the speed of light in a vacuum is the same for all observers, regardless of the motion of the light source. Nothing is more extraordinary than the absolute character of the speed of light.
This reminds me of another thing that is quite a paradox and is extremely problematic. And in fact, somebody else that I think is an insider with Hockney and the Pythagorean Illuminati that's contacted me a few times. She'll probably watch this, actually. She seems to watch it whenever I make videos responding to these guys. The problem with light that I can't find a reasonable solution for is that, okay, so if you have no mass, you should not have momentum. And if mass is energy, if a photon has no mass, where in the fuck is it getting the energy to move
Einstein did not attempt to explain this singular fact of nature. He merely accepted it as true, and built his theory around it. If, as Newton believed, the speed of light is not fixed, then space and time must be fixed. If, by contrast, the speed of light is fixed, then it's space and time that are not fixed. For Newton, the speed of light could go up to infinity. Infinity, in his thinking, was the speed deployed by God. Gravitational effects were instantaneous in Newton's theory of gravity because God, who was equivalent to absolute space in Newton's system, could literally transmit the necessary information infinitely fast. When Einstein abolished infinite speed and made the speed of light the cosmic speed limit, it signified that all forces, including gravity, took time to be transmitted. It also meant that Einstein had killed off Newton's God. It never once occurred to Einstein that the fact, proclaimed by his own theory, that no material thing could ever be accelerated to light speed, and hence that light speed was an ontological boundary and barrier, indicated that light belonged to a different category of existence from matter. All material things travel slower than light speed. That immediately begs the question of how light can belong to the material world if it behaves differently from all material things. The answer, of course, is that it does not belong to the material world, which is exactly why it exhibits entirely different behavior. Science is ideologically incapable of reaching this simple conclusion. In Cartesian philosophy, there is only one thing that cannot be matter, and that is mind. The inescapable conclusion is thus that light is the agent of mind, and what indeed could possibly be a better candidate? The singularity that precedes the Big Bang is a singularity of pure light. Pure light is pure mathematics, is pure mind. Light, ontologically, is what unextended mathematics actually is. Unextended mathematics actually is. Logically, is what unextended mathematics actually of pure light. Pure light is it. The singularity that precedes the Big Bang is a singularity of pure light. Pure light is pure mathematics, is pure mind. Light, ontologically, is what unextended mathematics actually is. The Big Bang is a light event, a mental event. In particular, the Big Bang involves the breaking of the perfect symmetry of light. Matter is broken light, asymmetric light, recalcitrant, sluggish thought. In mathematical terms, as we shall see, the domain of light is ruled by the mathematical property of orthogonality. The material universe, by contrast, is ruled by the property of non-orthogonality. Dimensionless existence is orthogonal existence, while dimensional existence is non-orthogonal existence. It really is that simple. Dimensionality flows from the loss of perfect orthogonality. If perfect orthogonality is restored, as it always is in the end, the physical universe is eradicated, and reality returns to the singularity of pure light. God did not say, "Let there be light." Light is eternal. In fact, light is God, the real God. So, is light actually mind, as we have asserted? Let's see if light does indeed have exactly the properties that Descartes attributed to mind. To do so, light must be immaterial, massless, unextended, outside space and time, and be constantly in motion. Because if thinking stopped, mind would cease to exist, and mind is simply that which thinks, and can do nothing else, it thinks forever. The cosmic mind that controls the physical cosmos is a singularity of light. Light controls matter. Matter is made from light, from the breaking of light. Ultimately, all that exists is light, and light is just ontological mathematics, that is, mathematics exists as light. Mathematics is not some bizarre, unreal abstraction. Mathematics is light itself. The light from the sun is mathematics. We are bathed in pure mathematics every day. Mathematics is life. Mathematics is mind. The biggest mistake humanity ever made was in failing to understand what mathematics actually is. Without light, we would be dead. Without light, we would not exist. Nothing would exist. The grand unified, final theory of everything is the theory of light, which is simply mathematics. Everything comes from math, everything comes from light, everything comes from mind. Matter does not exist in its own right. It is simply a special mode of mind, resulting from specific mathematical properties of mind. Dark energy and dark matter. In physical cosmology and astronomy, dark energy is an unknown form of energy which is hypothesized to permeate all of space, tending to accelerate